Imagine stepping into a world where the streets are rivers of filth, kings play deadly political games, and a single cough could mean death. Sounds unreal? Well, welcome to the shocking truths of medieval life that schools never tell you. Did you know that knights sometimes wore full armor that weighed over 100 pounds, yet fought for hours without rest? Or that peasants could be punished by having their noses slit or faces branded, all for crimes we'd barely blink at today. But here's the twist. While we think of medieval medicine as primitive, some remedies were terrifyingly advanced, like using leeches to balance your humors, which sometimes killed faster than the plague itself. And speaking of the plague, over 25 million people vanished in Europe alone. Imagine losing 1/3 of your country in just a few years, with no warning, no cure. You'll also learn why medieval castles weren't just majestic. They were cages where lords imprisoned family and rivals in darkness, feeding them scraps to watch power struggles unfold. Ever wonder what food really looked like? Forget your storybook bread. Most peasants survived on gruel so thin it barely filled your stomach, while nobles feasted on exotic meats, spiced with gold dust, flaunting wealth amidst horror. And there's a secret about medieval law you would never guess. If someone accused you of witchcraft, a trial could involve horrific tests designed to kill, and even survival often meant lifelong scars. But here's the kicker, the most shocking fact. Despite all this chaos, filth, and cruelty, medieval people built towering cathedrals and incredible art that still inspires awe today, proving that even in the darkest times, human creativity and resilience shone brighter than you ever imagined. Stick around, because what you think you know about the Dark Ages is about to be completely shattered. And just when you thought you had seen the worst, medieval life throws another shocking curveball, because the everyday reality was far stranger than you imagine. Take hygiene, for example. Most people didn't bathe for months, sometimes years, and that stench wasn't just unpleasant, it was deadly, attracting lice and spreading disease. But here's the twist. They had bathhouses that were also hotbeds of crime and scandal, where nobles mingled with thieves and secrets were traded over steaming pools. And speaking of secrets, did you know that medieval communication was brutal? Messages took weeks to deliver, and a simple misunderstanding could spark wars or wipe out entire villages. Money was rare, so barter ruled, and sometimes that meant trading children or livestock for survival. But the most unbelievable part, religion dominated every minute of life, yet even the clergy were far from saintly. Monks secretly hunted forbidden books, lords bribed priests for favor, and corruption ran so deep that entire cities lived under a double standard of piety and cruelty. Now imagine the cities themselves, crowded, smoky, and chaotic, streets so narrow that carts barely fit, animals roaming freely, and sewage running openly through the lanes, carrying hidden dangers at every step. Yet people still laughed, feasted, and celebrated life, because survival demanded hope even amidst terror. And the laws, absolute nightmare. Minor crimes could mean maiming, branding, or death, but nobles often got away with murder, literally, just by paying fines or wielding influence. And here's a twist most don't expect. Medieval women had more power than history books admit, running estates while husbands were at war, influencing political marriages, and even leading rebellions. Yet they were constantly under threat, their lives balanced on a knife's edge between autonomy and oppression. And warfare wasn't just battlefields. Sieges meant starving entire towns, sometimes forcing people to eat rats, leather, or even resort to cannibalism in desperate hours. True stories that haunt the imagination. Meanwhile, entertainment was darkly ironic. Jousts, executions, and public spectacles blended thrill with terror, teaching obedience and fear simultaneously. But you haven't heard the strangest part. Medieval science was bizarrely experimental, with alchemists chasing gold and immortality, often poisoning themselves in the process, yet their obsession laid groundwork for modern chemistry. And then there's the architecture. Fortresses and cathedrals built in staggering complexity, sometimes taking centuries to finish, all while peasants starved outside their walls. The contrast between suffering and splendor was unimaginable, and you'll be shocked by the medical practices. Surgeries without anesthesia, bloodletting, and herbal concoctions that could heal or kill, depending on the skill and luck of the practitioner. And the religious mindset made death omnipresent. Cemeteries crowded inside towns, mass graves after plagues, and children dying before adulthood was tragically normal. But even with all this danger, people innovated. Windmills, plows, early universities, and guilds that formed the backbone of modern economies, all born from a struggle that was constant, relentless, and unforgiving. And here's a twist that flips everything. Despite the superstition, fear, and disease, medieval people experienced joy and humor that survives in poetry, songs, and art. They laughed, danced, and celebrated victories, showing resilience that's hard to imagine today. Yet the darkest secret might be the invisible enemy, hunger, famine, and poverty, that dictated every choice. A bad harvest could mean hundreds dead in a single village, children sold or abandoned, families torn apart, and even the powerful weren't safe. Disease, rebellion, or betrayal could erase dynasties overnight. And the shocking truth about medieval warfare: not all battles were heroic. Sieges, ambushes, and terror tactics were standard, leaving civilians trapped, starving, or slaughtered, a reality sanitized in movies and textbooks. And religion's role was double-edged. It offered hope and calm, immunity, but also justified cruelty. Witch hunts, inquisitions, and forced conversions stained centuries, and yet they built, wrote, and dreamed. Illuminated manuscripts, stained glass, and epic tales of heroes and monsters reflected a culture that thrived despite constant threats. And here's the final mind-blowing reveal. Modern conveniences, roads, hospitals, universities, legal systems, even certain medicines owe their roots to this turbulent, brutal, and often terrifying world. Without the struggle, the mistakes, and the extremes of medieval life, the world today would be unimaginably different. So next time you imagine knights, castles, or peasants in straw huts, remember, they lived, loved, feared, created, and survived in ways that challenge every assumption you have about history. And maybe, just maybe, we've underestimated the ingenuity and courage it took to navigate a world that was as beautiful as it was brutal, a world that still echoes in our lives, even if we rarely see it. Just when you think you've seen all the darkness and chaos, the medieval world throws its final, mind-bending secrets at you. Because survival wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, and sometimes downright cunning. Picture this: entire towns under siege, neighbors turning on neighbors, and yet communities somehow found ways to thrive, celebrate, and even protect one another from invisible threats like disease, famine, and betrayal. And here's a twist most people never learn. Medieval peasants weren't completely powerless. They organized secret networks, shared hidden knowledge of herbs, survival tricks, and even secret escape routes through forests and rivers to survive raids or feasts gone wrong. And while nobles lived in luxurious isolation, they too lived under constant threat: assassinations, betrayals, political marriages arranged purely for gain. And sometimes the person close, stuck to them, could be their deadliest enemy. You'll also be shocked to learn that some medieval inventions, like eyeglasses, mechanical clocks, and even firefighting systems emerged not from comfort or leisure, but sheer necessity in a world that offered no safety net, no hospitals, no police. And let's talk about money, or the lack of it. Most people had no currency, relying on barter, favors, and debts that could last generations, trapping families in cycles of poverty or dependence on cruel landlords. But here's a twist that flips everything. Despite the chaos, people experienced profound love, art, and creativity. Lovers carved secret initials in stone. Minstrels told stories that carried hope through dark times, and artisans crafted works of beauty that outlasted kings, wars, and plagues. And medicine, oh, it was terrifying, yet sometimes surprisingly effective. Leeches, herbal poultices, and even surgical interventions that would make modern surgeons gasp, all applied with faith, superstition, and occasional brilliance. And here's a shocker you won't believe. Medieval crime wasn't always punished consistently. Some escaped with fines while others faced gruesome death for thefts of a loaf of bread, showing a world where luck, connections, and timing were just as important as morality. And the psychological toll was staggering. People lived with death literally at their doorstep, plagues wiping out friends and family, wars tearing villages apart, yet daily rituals, prayers, festivals, storytelling, kept hope alive in minds that might otherwise break under despair. And education wasn't just privilege, it was power. Monks and scholars copied texts by hand, preserving knowledge through centuries of instability, yet even they risked disease from ink and papyrus, exhaustion from endless labor, and persecution from political powers. And here's the real kicker about religion. It shaped every decision, justified cruelty, and offered salvation, all at once creating a world where morality, fear, and superstition were inseparable. And yet, people navigated it with ingenuity, finding loopholes, secret joys, and acts of rebellion in the shadows. And food? Again, it wasn't what you imagine. Survival often meant eating what today would be considered disgusting. Rats, gruel, stale bread, or moldy cheese. But occasionally, in secret corners, someone would taste a fruit or meat that felt like a feast, proving that hope, however fleeting, always persisted. And warfare was as psychological as physical. Spies, traitors, and ambushes meant the battlefield extended into every home, alley, and marketplace, leaving no one truly safe. And towns themselves were full of paradoxes. Open sewers, rampant disease, but also public festivals, vibrant markets, and spaces where ideas, rumors, and stories spread faster than armies. And the most shocking secret, power in the medieval world, was as much about perception as reality. One cleverly placed rumor, a single rumor of witchcraft, betrayal, or wealth could topple kings, ruin families, or elevate the powerless to positions of influence almost overnight. And here's the emotional twist. Despite all this death, cruelty, and fear, people still laughed, loved, and dreamed. They sang songs that survived centuries, painted images that still captivate us, and told stories that remind us that resilience isn't new, it's human. And the ultimate reveal, the final truth that changes how you see the Dark Ages, is this. Medieval life was never really dark. Yes, it was brutal, terrifying, and unfair, but it was also full of innovation, courage, art, and unbreakable human spirit. The same struggles that challenged their lives shaped the foundations of ours. Cathedrals, universities, legal systems, even some modern medicine. They all grew out of this chaos, born from the need to survive, adapt, and create meaning in a world that offered no guarantees. And the most mind-blowing fact of all, everything we think we know about the medieval world, its darkness, cruelty, and mystery, is just the surface. Beneath it lies a reality that is simultaneously horrifying, beautiful, terrifyingly smart, and deeply human. A reality that challenges every assumption you have about history, survival, and the power of resilience. So the next time you hear the word medieval, don't picture knights and castles alone. Picture a world where every day was a fight, a lesson, a story, and a spark of genius that still burns in our civilization today. The secrets you just learned aren't just history. They're a mirror showing us how far humans can endure, create, and thrive, even when the odds are stacked impossibly against them. And if you walk away remembering only one thing, let it be this: the medieval world wasn't dark. It was alive, unpredictable, shocking, and endlessly human.